everybody, welcome back to the Green Witch Homestead. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about salves. A salve is where you use oil to extract a certain element from the plant that's required for healing, and then you turn that oil with beeswax into a nice spread, almost the consistency of Vicks Vapor Rub. Today I am harvesting two different types of plants for two different salves that I make here out of my garden. The nice thing about salve making is you really only need 3 ingredients. The plant that you're taking the medicinal properties from, the oil that you're going to be infusing with the plant, and beeswax. The salves that I'm harvesting today are going to be my calendula and my jewelweed. Now, calendula is a flower. Most people know it. It's also called a pot marigold. It is, however, not a marigold, and using marigolds this way will not give you the same result. The calendula flower is what we harvest, and it is used to make a salve that is good for rashes, burns, things like that. The other one that I'm harvesting today is called jewelweed. Jewelweed does not cure poison ivy. You still need to dry out the rash to get rid of it completely. What the jewelweed does is it stops the itch, which keeps you from scratching it, which keeps you from spreading it around your body. Now, the jewelweed is not something that needs to be made into a salve. You can just take the plant and crush it up and use it directly, but the plant only grows for a small amount of time in the summer, so you don't have access to it all year long. So I like to make it into a salve. This is common calendula. Like I said, it's also called pot marigold. What we use from the calendula plant is the flower. So when they're open up like this, I just pop that flower head off, and then I'll put that to dry. You want to let some of them go to seed, like this one. And this is another way to tell calendula apart from marigold. So marigolds will have seed that kind of looks like grass. Calendula seeds are hard and curly like that. Whether you're harvesting wild or harvesting from your own garden, to leave a couple of the flower heads to go to seed. Otherwise, you're going to have to buy your calendula seeds again next year. Unless you live in the really higher north, like zone 4 or below, the calendula flower will reseed itself and come back. And if you live up there, you don't have to worry about it reseeding itself. You just let a couple flower heads go to seed and save the seeds. They're really big, they're easy to find, and they're easy to store. Also, while I'm standing here, can we just like admire? So this is a Chinese red noodle bean. I did grow them inspired by Jess, and I have to say I'm not disappointed. We are not big green bean fans here in our house, but I do like doing a lot of different stir fries, and I do like the occasional cooked green bean. One of my bean plants was a little faster growing than the others, so it started producing before I had enough to actually harvest. So I let this one go to seed, but they're amazing. They're delicious. You can't really eat them raw, but when you cook them, they have this really nice soft consistency and a very subtle bean flavor. So they're really good in stir fries, and they're really good just any way you would cook a green bean. And they look beautiful. They just climb so nicely. The other plant that we are focusing on today for our salves is jewelweed. It does not grow from seed very well. The seeds are very tough, and if you buy seeds from them, you have to make sure that they've been stratified, or the plant's not going to grow. Stratification is when the seed has gone through a period of cold or a freeze. You can duplicate it by putting the seed in your freezer for a couple days. The best way that I have found to get jewelweed in your garden is to find it out in the wild as a plant, or maybe hopefully find a nursery that has it and get that established plant in your garden early spring. So this is a jewelweed plant right here. It's a very delicate looking plant. It's a very pretty jade green leaves, and they're very thin and slightly translucent, as you can see through them pretty well. The stalks are also hollow, and you can kind of see the light through them as well. The easiest way to tell is these pretty orange jewel-like flowers. Another way to identify the jewelweed properly is by the seed pods, which is one of the funner things for me. As a kid, we used to call these touch-me-nots, because the seed pods are touch sensitive and they will literally explode. Harvesting the jewelweed is just a little bit easier than harvesting the calendula because you don't have to be really specific. The entire plant has the pieces that you need. And then you just break off the pieces that you need. Whenever you're doing a salve, you want to make sure that you're using dry plants. The reason for this is because your plants are going to be infused into an oil, and you're going to turn that oil into the salve to make it last longer on your shelf. However, if there's any water or moisture introduced into that oil, it's going to go rancid and it's not going to last as long. So you always want to work with dry herbs. What's nice about doing this is that means you don't always have to be the one growing the herbs. So if you have a reputable source that you can buy dried medicinals from, you can use them for making salves. I choose to dry my flowers and my stuff for making salves in the dehydrator as opposed to just hang drying them. Just lay it out on the tray. The reason that I do that is because I can control how dry I get them. Now, I don't want them crispy dry. You just want them wilted with as much of the moisture out of them as possible. Alright, so once your herbs are dry, you take them and put them in a jar, just like this. So this is the jewelweed, and that's the calendula. Now, I prefer to have a full jar. I'm going to wait on these until I have enough flowers to completely fill this jar. But the jewelweed, I've got a full jar, so I can show you what I do there. Basically, very much like making a tincture, you would just take your plant and fill your jar, and then you would fill it with your oil. Instead of the alcohol, you use an oil. Now, this is called emulsification. This is where herbalism gets confusing for a lot of people. Just having the plant and picking the plant doesn't always necessarily mean that you're going to get the compound in the plant that helps you with what you're trying to help yourself with. The main thing to remember is that there are different ways of extracting the usable compounds from your plants. There are even some plants that have different uses. One of my favorites is lemon balm. Lemon balm, for example, if you were to make a decoction, which is boiling in hot water, it soothes the nerves and calms the stomach. However, if you were to make a tincture, which is where you were to dissolve it in alcohol, that tincture is used for cold sores. So knowing how to prepare your plants and how to actually turn them into medicine is a big part of herbalism, much more so than just knowing that this plant does this. You have to know how. Once you have your oil covering your product, you simply get a lid, put it on, and then sit it in a sunny windowsill for several weeks. I personally like to do a lot of my emulsifications during a full moon. The reason I do that is more for my own personal beliefs. I like to set these outside where the sun is going to get them nice and warm, and they're going to have that full aspect around the sun, and then they're going to have that night in the full moonlight as well. It just kind of adds a little kick. The important thing to remember when making a salve is that you're going to be using beeswax to thicken your oil so that it turns into a spread. If your beeswax is not yellow, it's not natural. The other thing that I really like about sourcing beeswax from local beekeepers, not only does it support the local community, they also give options where you can have them melt them into different molds. So she gives me her beeswax in these little 1-ounce pucks, which is really convenient for measuring out the ratios for making a salve. Because to make a salve, you need 1 cup of your infused oil when it's ready to 1/2 ounce of beeswax. And all you do at that point is you can use a double boiler, or you can use a crock pot, which is what I like to use. You just pour your oil into your crock pot, turn it on low heat, and then add your beeswax, and then stir. At this point is where you can have fun with it, and you can do whatever you want to it. You can add colors, scents, and all sorts of different things. I like to color coordinate my salves so that it helps my customers recognize what each salve is for, and when they open their jar, in case the sticker label that I put on my jars ever falls off, they can tell just by the color of the salve. These are 3 different salves that I have still on hand. I have several others that I make. This is a comfrey salve. This here is a black salve. And this is my jewelweed salve. Unlike tinctures, salves can kind of be combined like you would a tea. So if you have 2 plants that have similar properties or take care of similar situations, you can add them together. The jewelweed salve is the only one that's a standalone, and it's only jewelweed and beeswax in there. All my other salves have a combination. So you can have fun with your salves. You can do your research, figure out what plants you want to use in what combinations, and then put them all together into your oils and mix those oils when you're making your base salve. Nothing says that you can't combine a bunch together, and in all honesty, a lot of them work better together when you do that. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys try making some salves. It's so much fun to know that when you can grow a plant in your garden and then turn around and use that to make medicine to help keep your family and friends safe. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. And remember guys, get your hands dirty.